So welcome, my name is Mia Bays and I run Bird's Eye View, and we are a mission to bring ever greater audiences to films by women, and we're 17 years young now. We started life as a film festival and we were just doing this for 10 days a year, and then we decided that was really not enough. And now we work 365 days a year, and really, we really do work 365 days a year to spotlight films that are written by women, directed by women, or based on a book or a story by a woman. For us, it's all about the female gaze, which means the female perspective in cinema, not about putting women in the frame, but about putting the female creative gaze behind the camera, and it's about who tells the story. The point is that films by women are not better or worse, they are just different. And it's about celebrating difference. It's wider perspectives of the world and centering all kinds of stories. And so I'm delighted to be here welcoming a conversation around the film Cocoon, which is released in cinemas and online from December the 11th. And so I would like to welcome Amelia Abraham, who's going to be hosting this conversation. I would like to welcome writer-director Leonie Krippendorff. Welcome, and over to you.
Hi.
Hello, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much, Mia. And thank you, Leonie, for talking to me. My name's Amelia Abraham. I'm a journalist. I write about a lot of LGBTQ+ issues, and I'm also a massive fan of queer cinema, and also used to work at Peccadillo Pictures, who are releasing this film in the UK, briefly about 12 years ago. It was kind of my first ever job. So that's kind of what inspired my love of queer cinema, and I really loved this film, so thank you, Leonie. Do you want to start by telling us where in the world you are right now?
Yeah, I just came back to Germany yesterday night. I was in Italy for 6 weeks, in Sicily, on a little island called Lipari, because I was writing a script there, and so now I'm back. And it's rainy, but all good.
Great. I want to ask you about what you've been writing a bit later on. But to start with, I just wondered, what's it like putting a film out at the moment? It must be quite strange because travel's a bit limited, although I'm glad you've been able to do some. And also, I suppose not everybody can make it to the cinema. So could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I was a bit afraid about that because Cocoon came out in German cinemas in the middle of August, in the middle of the pandemic, and cinemas have been open, but with very limited seats, and it was very hot outside. So I thought that probably no one's going to come see the film. But I was surprised. It was actually a really nice experience because people have been coming and have been seeing Cocoon and have been sitting there with their masks and staying for the Q&A. And that was, it really moved me because I think I just saw that, it's so important to have cinema and culture. And and then Cocoon is traveling a lot on festivals. And so it's like been seen now for people worldwide on festivals. And of course, I'm very sad that I can't go, but I had a lot of online Q&As, and so it's a different experience, but still you feel like you accompany your film a bit.
Yeah, I think that makes sense what you said about people still feeling hungry for culture and experiences. I mean, in the UK, we haven't really been able to go back to cinemas yet, but I definitely think that I've been watching more queer films on BFI Player and things like that, because it's more difficult to see your queer community, or you can't go to a gay bar, or I haven't been able to. I think consuming queer culture in other ways has been really important in kind of getting through this time. So maybe that's a reason why people will want to watch this film, I would have thought. So do you want to tell me a little bit about the sort of beginnings of the idea and how this film came about? It's your second film. Maybe a little bit about the writing process as well?
Yes. So actually, I didn't have like a proper idea what kind of film I want to make. I had the desire to confront myself with my feelings, very insecure and also painful feelings when I have been a teenager. And I've been thinking about that and then writing down like things that I then recognized that I didn't really see them in coming of age films before. So a big part for me was like all the physical process, like the process from being a girl to getting a woman, that was very disturbing and painful for me. And I didn't really see that in films before. So that was maybe the starting point, that I wanted to make a film which is very physical. And the first scene I wrote was a scene between the main protagonist, where one was getting her period in the school, and the other one was helping her washing out the blood of the pants. And that was the starting point. And from that point on, I developed the characters, and yeah, and then I just created the world around the film. At first, it was a story happening on the countryside, but then I recognized, because I grew up in Berlin, and I don't really know the life at the countryside for young people. And so I think I was fascinated by that world, but I couldn't really tell something about it. So then I decided to write the story in an environment that I know very well, and that's Berlin. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you what kind of elements of Berlin is the Berlin that you know. Do you think that, so the main character is called Nora, and has kind of romantic feelings developing for another character called Romy. And
Yes.
also, I guess we should say, as sort of dealing with the things that you deal with as a teenager, like you say, kind of becoming a woman and getting her first period, but also without giving too much away, you know, spending a lot of time with her sister and her sister's friend, who are really into social media and boys, and talking about people's weight and a lot of the things that girls are into when they're teenagers, and she doesn't really fit into that. So it's kind of about finding your belonging when you're a little bit lost, is the way I interpreted it. Was any of that kind of personal to you as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think I had many feelings that that Nora also has, although Nora is a much more brave teenager than I was, I guess. And yeah, but what I try to do is to transform my feelings, my memories of being a teenager, into a world of today, and into all the conflicts that this generation has now, that is growing up with social media and is confronted with so many other topics and problems and another kind of pressure. And so I was interested how this would go together. And it actually worked pretty naturally for me, because I figured out that, like, in the core of the feelings, everything stays the same. Like, it's the same questions and the same insecurities, and it's the same painfully, but the way how the new young generation is dealing with it, that is changing a lot. And
Yeah, and it kind of feels, I really liked the way that there was some of the film kind of shot in the aspect of like being an Instagram story, almost, just little bits, or it kind of felt like social media. You were seeing it through your phone at moments, but then sort of other aspects, I suppose Nora feels a bit like she's almost not really of this sort of world, or quite up to date with all the other kids in a way, because she's she's really interested in, well, I don't want to say too much, but kind of nature and things like that. So yeah, it kind of feels like she's caught between the two. So I think that actually came through a little bit. And I read somewhere that you said that you felt like you wanted to make this film because you didn't feel like there was a kind of German like lesbian storyline or bisexual queer storyline in a coming of age movie, which I thought was really interesting. Did I interpret that right? Or do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was not the reason why I wanted to make the film, but that was something that I discovered because I've been looking for like maybe films with similar topics, and then I couldn't find a German film where two schoolgirls were falling in love with each other, which I found very, very strange because, like if you're like 14 or something, that's the time when you fall in love with people for the first time and make like your first sexual experiences and stuff. And so, yeah, it was strange for me that there's no film about queer schoolgirls. And yeah, that then even more encouraged me to make Cocoon.
Mm-hmm. And was there any other kind of German cinema that inspired you in your filmmaking, or anything that you would encourage people who like Cocoon to go and check out, because you had kind of any references in mind, or you were inspired by any filmmakers when you made it?
Not directly, and not German. I mean, of course, I have I saw films that probably inspired me without that I knew it. Like Blue's the Warmest Color, or Fucking Amal. It's also called Show Me Love, I guess. And so those films probably have been influenced me a lot, but I didn't really think about them when I wrote Cocoon. It was more like that I'm writing very much out of my stomach, and so of course influences that I had would somewhere put up in the script and then in the film. And
yeah, would you say more films that just influenced you as a person, maybe, and then
yes,
you as a person became a film director?
yes, definitely, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your kind of career as a director. What was your path into filmmaking?
I was a very bad student in school, so I didn't finish school, and I became a photographer, and I enjoyed that very much, but also I was missing something. I always wanted to add something to the photos that I did, so I tried out to make a little film and handed it into university, and I didn't really have a lot of expectations, but I got in, and then from that point on, it was really something that I love as nothing else in my life. Like, it's really, really important for me. And I was very lucky to find the one thing that I really want to do, and also that I feel like I can be good in. So because I like in school it was always I felt like I'm worse than everyone else and everything, and then if you then find the thing that you actually really want to do, it's very good.
Yeah, I think you can definitely, I didn't know that you did photography before, but I think that you can see that in the way that Cocoon is shot. Do you maybe want to explain a little bit more about those decisions, and explain to the viewer a little bit more about the way that it's shot?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I wanted to achieve is like a mixture between being very, like, having documentary aspects in the film and having like a feeling of an authentic world, but also I wanted it to feel a bit like a memory, because I think we all have this one summer that we always gonna remember in our life because it was so meaningful to develop our personality. And so I wanted to have like this dreamy memory feeling as well. And this mixture, to find that mixture, we have been talking a lot, me and the cinematographer Martin Neumeier, how we can achieve that. And also we didn't have a lot of money, but we did wanted to look in a certain way. And so, yeah.
Thank you, that's great. And I also wondered, I haven't seen it yet, but I will go and watch it very soon, your first film.
Yes.
It's called Looping, is that right?
Looping, yes, that's right.
Or is that that's the translation, or was that the name in German too?
No, that's the name in German too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you please tell us a little bit about that for anyone who's maybe watched Cocoon and really enjoyed it and wants to kind of find out about your previous work? It would be really great to hear about it, and also to hear about, you know, whether you think there are similarities or whether how you think your filmmaking's moved on since then.
Yeah, so Looping was my graduation film from film university, and it's a story about 3 women in 3 different generations that meet at a psychiatrist hospital, and they fall in love and have like a special relationship for the time they're there in this clinic. And it's a film about like healing in the process of like being close with other people. And I think that it's really hard for me because it feels so different to Cocoon, that similarities to, like, I always ask the others to find similarities, but I think what maybe is like a topic that both have is that women strengthen each other, like in being close and being loved by each other. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, you can definitely see that, I suppose, in the family relationships in Cocoon, and in the friendships, and yeah, it kind of reminded me of the sort of intensity of female relationships that in life that you have. I wanted to ask you, while we're talking about your filmmaking on the whole, I was also reading that the film that you were writing, it was in Sicily, right? Is about an intersex teenager, is that right?
More a child, is a child being shortly before puberty and then having to decide for if it feels for one gender more or less, like or also about the question if the child has to decide. And and I mean, I'm just writing it, so I don't know as much about it as I know about Cocoon, but it is told very much also like being confronted with this very special nature that you have in that islands, because you have so many volcanoes that are erupting all the times. And so it's like a fairy tale on those islands. And
Thank you, that's great. And I suppose there's a slight similarity in the subject matter there, in that you're kind of dealing with LGBTQ plus issues, or people working out their identity. Is that something that's sort of important for you to represent on screen because you feel we need more representation in these areas, or is it something that just comes really natural to you?
Yeah, I think it comes very natural for me. I think I grew up in a very queer world always. I've been growing up in a collective, and my best friend, more or less, like best adult friend in that collective, was a gay man. So I would always like crawl in his bed in the morning and breaking up his affairs. So, you know, like I always grew up in a world that was queer. And then of course I am queer as well. And so I think it's more that I'm really yeah, as you said, I feel natural writing those kind of stories, and it would feel very strange to just, you know, write about like a heteronormative world that I don't feel like being it, and I don't feel like the world is like that. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think that for me, it was definitely, I mean, I enjoyed it as an adult, but also it was definitely the type of film that I think I would have really enjoyed seeing when I was a bit younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a film called Water Lilies by Celine Sciamma, which
Yes.
I remember seeing when I was younger, and I just found that seeing like younger queer women on screen so helpful and important. And I'm sure for a next generation, this film will have a really similar impact. But yeah,
great.
I guess I wanted to ask you the same question. What did queer cinema mean to you when you were growing up? Was it important to you?
Yeah, well, you just named Celine Sciamma, which is a filmmaker that is very important to me. And when I was growing up, I feel like I didn't see so much queer cinema. I don't remember. Maybe even Show Me Love was the first queer film that I really remember seeing. So that was also a reason why I wanted to make Cocoon, because this film I think I would have hoped to see when I was 14, and not just because of the queerness, also because of how it feels just to grow up being a woman. And yeah, and I mean I really, as far now, I just got a lot of reactions from adult people that like connected to Cocoon like in a way of a memory, and I really value that, but I also really hope that people in the age of the protagonist are seeing the film, and yeah, I'm curious about their reaction. I had some, but not too many till now.
Yeah, you almost kind of answered my final question, which was, my final question about the film, which was, yeah, what do you hope people take away from the experience of watching it?
Well, yeah, for young girls, I really hope that they feel strengthened by it, and they feel encouraged to live the life they want to live, and to love whom they want to love. And I think for adult people, it is for me valuable to figure out that, like, for example, I had a lot of reaction like by older men who have a totally other life reality than the protagonists in my film, that have been very, very touched and have been seeing themselves very much in that 14-year-old girl. And I found that very beautiful, because I think like we all are going through very similar feelings when we are young, and have the same doubts, and so to be reminded on that, this is, I think, something that I would wish as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think sort of having those doubts, but also I think, you know, we always associate those like sort of sepia tinted beautiful summers where you kind of come of age with being a teenager, but actually I think that they are possible when you're an adult too, as long as you're not living through coronavirus times.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I wondered if Maya wanted to add anything at all.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Yeah, I would love a parting shot from both of you, actually. So Leonie, as Amelia mentioned, Nora is quite unusual in that she's an inner city child, but nature is very important to her. She's sort of slightly out of time in some ways, and she collects caterpillars. And so there's just such a lovely thread of sunlight and nature, and her gaze is really kind of very much on the kind of micro. Can you just talk a bit about that and why that was an important part?
Yeah. So that is actually something pretty autobiographical, because like the collective I grew up, one man was having this butterfly breed, and I knew that from my childhood, and I found it so beautiful, because for me growing up like in the city, that was always something so nice to go to the nature and to free the butterflies there and see them flying away and stuff. And also I thought it would be like a little bit nerdy hobby maybe for Nora, which reminds on like a childhood or like a hobby that she still has from childhood, because she's really like in between woman and child. And then later on I recognized the big metaphor for the film, like this coming of age story, and then the caterpillars and the butterflies. And I was a bit afraid of that, like if the metaphor would be too big, but at the same time I was so in love with like the observation of these little animals, and like changing to something that's looking completely different but still is the same, and or is coming out from something. And also like this in the film there's this last sentence that the caterpillar, that the butterfly still remembers the life as a caterpillar, which is true. And I think this is so so true for all of us, that we sometimes carry around so many insecurities and feelings from our childhood still. And maybe you don't see that from the outside, but everything is still there somehow. So yeah, I decided to keep it then.
It's really beautifully done. I love that aspect. And Amelia, that metaphor is quite appropriate actually, because in a way we're all hoping to be butterflies again. We're all maybe caterpillars this year. We're all stuck. And that's something beautiful about the film, watching people touch each other. Oh my God, remember that? And parties. And you know, it's like, I mean, now it's winter, of course, so it's also it's also the summer, but it's also just watching normality. And of course we're all hoping to come back to that at some point. So I just wanted to pick up on that point, and yeah, like how what these kind of films right now mean to everyone, and to someone like you, and to yeah, how you'd recommend it to others, particularly in response to what we've lived through right now.
Yeah, I would say that watching it made me miss going to Berlin quite a lot, to start with. It was really nice to be transported to another place. It also transported me back to being a teenager, but I can't physically go back there, sadly. I mean, it made me miss being a teenager in some ways, and being like, oh, it's really difficult business being a teenager in other ways. But yeah, I suppose just made me look forward to, exactly as we said, nature, being outside, going to Berlin again as a like beautiful free place, and swimming in a swimming pool, which I haven't done for about a year. So those would be the main things for sure.
Wonderful. So thank you both, Leonie and Amelia, for that lovely conversation, and thank you, Sarah, for translating for us. And the film is out in cinemas and online if you're watching this in the UK, and if not, you need to look it up on other services like Just Watch, and you'll find it locally, I hope. So congratulations, Leonie, and thank you, Amelia, and enjoy the film.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Leonie, and thank you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you all. Thanks for having me.